The Gallagher Shots podcast is sponsored by Tyre Spot, the North East's leading tyre supplier with branches across the region. Tyre Spot don't just do tyres, they cover everything from servicing to wheel alignment. They can handle every aspect of your car's maintenance. For more information, visit tyrespot.co.uk. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome back to the Gallagher Shots YouTube channel. My name is Matthew, and thank you for being here for another episode of Beyond the Lines. It's the show where we get an opposition supporters' view when it comes to previewing Newcastle's next game. And this Sunday, 4:30, it's the game that some are calling the Matthew Debuchy Derby, as Newcastle travel to the Emirates in search of those last gorgeous points that might just get us over the line to get us Champions League football. And to help me preview this one, I am joined by a very special guest. He is a stand-up comedian. He is a podcast host. He is one half of the Cooligans, but more importantly, he is a huge Arsenal fan. It's the brilliant, it's the beautiful, it's Alexis Guerreros, everyone.
Thank you. You way overused beautiful and brilliant, but I'll take it.
I don't think so. Not from what I'm hearing and seeing, man. I think you're selling yourself a little bit short there. How are you doing?
No, you brought me back Matthew Debuchy, bro.
Well, I didn't know. I normally like to do that a little bit at the start, mention an obscure player that's played for both teams, and especially in the Premier League era. And there isn't that many, you know. Like
he's one of those Barclay era players that I always bring up. If you got like 3 or 4 names, I always go Scott Sinclair, Debuchy, and there's one other one that I always bring up that just Roque Santa Cruz, dude.
Roque Santa Cruz, what a player! Well, what a player when he was a Blackburn. But fell off a little bit when he went to City. But it's so obscure that there's only
By the way,
5.
Still playing.
Is he?
Still playing pro in Paraguay. He's like 42.
He was still scoring. Speaking of beautiful, by the way, he was a pretty good looking dude.
Yeah.
He was a pretty nice South American piece of striker.
He is the image. He's like in the supermarkets. We sell those like smutty books with like a rainforest and a guy with a shirt off making out with a jet. You know those books where the cover's like
it's
really
like a pastel
smutty?
painted front. And he's got like a white shirt open. Ripped.
He looks like every guy on those books.
That is spot on. That is an astute observation, mate. Well, like I said, mate, I really appreciate you making time for us. As people will probably know, Alexis is from the other side of the pond. It's currently 3 o'clock at your
it's about 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock, yeah. So, we really appreciate you making the time, and we'll get onto your podcast in a little bit, and we'll get onto Arsenal and playing Newcastle at the weekend. But given you're the first American I've ever had on this particular podcast, we've had Americans on the channel before, which has been great, and just the passion that you guys bring for the love of not just the Premier League but football. It's just so invigorating and refreshing, and it's great. The positivity is awesome. But I want to talk about a little bit closer to home first and foremost, mate. I want to talk about football or soccer. We're not going to pull at them threads. I'm not going to have that argument on this podcast.
You do know you guys invented the word, though, right? Soccer.
Right. I'm not getting into it. Okay. I'm not getting into it.
We didn't name Soccer AM. We didn't name Soccer Saturday. That's all you guys.
Well, that's someone else's fault and not mine.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Let's talk about the sport and its popularity in the US, because over the last couple of decades, it's went from strength to strength to strength to strength. And I know that I'm talking about in terms of popularity within America, maybe outside looking in, at least for the first decade of this rise of popularity, a lot of people still saw it as this retirement home for old stars. Everyone always remembers, David Beckham moving over there and the effect that had. And then, you've got your Henrys, your Zlatans, even a cup of coffee for Gerrard and Lampard eventually, or for the latter. And then I know right now people are talking about some kids. I'm just looking at my notes. Lionel Messi. I don't know who that is. I don't watch.
American. You don't need to know him.
Yeah, I've heard he's a bit overrated, but I obviously say in jest. But what do you think? It's a bit of a broad question to start with, but over the last couple of decades, what do you think's led to this influx in popularity in soccer? I know it's always been there, and it's always been popular to an extent, but would you say it's those stars coming to the league? Would you say maybe it's the accessibility over the last few years of Americans being able to watch every Premier League game and all of Serie A, and you're getting so much football on your TV sets? Or is it a mix of everything? What do you think's led to this rise of popularity in football?
Yeah, there's been a few watershed moments. Obviously, Pele in the 80s, right? They were selling out stadiums to go see this guy. And then all of a sudden the sport drops off a cliff as soon as that league collapses. And it felt like it would never get going. And then obviously MLS starting slow to move, to move the needle. And I think it's just because the average American didn't really need to pay attention to the sport because it wasn't in front of them. Of the most recent watershed moments, obviously David Beckham was a big deal, but I don't think that moved the needle as much. I think that opened a lot of doors. What moved the needle the most was NBC putting the Premier League on every weekend. It ended up becoming, in America, there's a tradition. I don't know if it's the same in England, where when you're a kid on Saturday mornings, you watch cartoons. Saturday morning cartoons is like a big thing, as you're eating
Spider-Man and X-Men. It was for me, man. Spider-Man and X-Men.
Same thing, or like, whatever, the Thundercats or however old, those types of cartoons. Soccer has replaced that. The Premier League has replaced that. Those kids who grew up and are my age now are watching soccer on Saturday mornings. When Arsenal go up against Newcastle, I still have the rest of the day after that match. You in England, and I've been to at least 24 games in my time. Traveling over to England for work and for fun. There's so much angst throughout the whole day about this match at the end of the day, where you wake up, the game's on. You wake up, you watch it. It's a little too early to get too upset. And I think that schedule has fit. NBC did such a great job of putting great shoulder content around it before and after it. I think it taught a lot of Americans what the game looks like. And then if they wanted to see it live, MLS was right there. The next watershed moment would have to be during lockdown. The whole country's locked down for a bit of a while. The first sports to start back up were soccer. Bundesliga started up right away. NWSL, the women's league, started up right away. MLS started up right away. And people were stuck at home. And you saw the numbers really balloon from that point. And I think there's so much more attention being put on it. And then if for younger folks, I just think the idea of a professional footballer being a superstar alongside your NFL and NBA stars, which were the primary sports stars here, maybe even baseball, I think that's because of the internet. You have TikTok and Instagram and all of this. A little kid knows who Messi is, knows who Mbappe is, knows who Lamine Yamal is. Like, kids look up to Lamine Yamal without even being experts in the sport or knowing the sport or being able to go watch it every week. Some of them don't even care about MLS. They just care about these names. And I think if you interview or talk to most people under the age of 20, they would tell you they care more about the player than they do the badge or the shirt they wear, the club they play
I would say
for.
It's the same over here a little bit as well. Like, I'll see in Newcastle, or maybe not Newcastle City Centre, but you'll see just around the northeast sometimes a kid, for a while it was like wearing a City top with Grealish or Haaland on the back. And then you'd speak to their dad and it's like, oh, he still goes to the Newcastle games or the Sunderland games. It's just, he loves that player so much, we couldn't not get him the jersey for Christmas. You know what I mean?
It's so wild. Yeah, that's the same here. I'm in New York. You see everything. There's little kids walking around in Al Nassr shirts. And it's like, bro, I know you don't watch those games. I'm not
if ever shouted that at a 6-year-old, like, you don't watch the Saudi League. Shut up.
Yeah.
Tell me the score.
Those like toxic dudes who'll yell at women wearing band shirts, like, name me 3 of their songs. I'd do that to a child. I'm like, give me 3 players, 3 native players for Al Nassr. Who they beat last week? Who's the starting goalkeeper for Al Hilal? And they're like, leave my child alone, sir. But like that to me is like pretty common now, where you just see kids walking around in any superstar shirt. Where when I was young, you wore a shirt with no name on the back. Like Thierry Henry was my idol. I only recently got a shirt with his name on the back. I have multiple Arsenal kits. I've never once gotten a name on the back, because to me, the badge was what was important. I was an Arsenal fan, and it didn't matter who wore the shirt. I was going to root for them, mostly. And now it's the other way around, which I like. But I think that's, I could talk to my nephew who doesn't really care about sports at all, but he'll know, oh, Lamine Yamal did something big against Real Madrid. He knows those names, which is crazy. You'd have to be the most deep, sports sicko back in the day to know what was happening in Europe. Where now, just you're scrolling, you see it.
And I think at the time as well, I think some of the European football you guys would get back in the day would be like the Champions League final, and you wouldn't see the group games. You'd just see the final would be on, and that would be like, late afternoon.
Before like the 20 teens, before my era, that stuff used to be on pay-per-view. So you would have to you'd have to call your cable company and say, I want to watch Champions League final. And they'd be like, all right, that's whatever, $13.99. And you'd have to say yes. And then everyone who wanted to watch it would go to that person's house. That's how crazy it was. Like,
big game.
I mean, it was like a boxing match,
Class. I mean, before we get into your fandom for Arsenal, because I really want to touch on that. Obviously, you have a podcast with Christian, your co-host on the Cooligans. Anyone who hasn't watched this, please check it out because it's A, very funny, and B, you get some really good guests in terms of the sphere of football over in America, especially, and it's really fascinating. In a recent episode, the most recent episode, I'm going to hopefully pronounce this right. Being English, you could really mess this name up. But yes. Will Kuntz.
Buddy, you got it. Yeah,
thank God. Get in there.
I was stressed.
Yeah. I'm going to have a little bead on there. A bit nervous, but it was a really fascinating interview. For those of you who don't know who Will Kuntz is, he's a general manager for LA Galaxy. He's been there a couple of years. They're having a very struggling season, but in the episode, I won't spoil it, you asked him a number of questions at the end about yay or nay. I think it was pro and reg. And the pro and reg thing really struck up a chord with me because you did ask him a question around promotion and relegation. Now, big Arsenal fan, but being an American, do you have an MLS team? Do you have like a team that you support?
The reason we started the podcast actually was because we got season tickets to New York City FC.
Right. So how long have they been
under the
City banner?
10 years. Yeah. 2015.
We've just spoke about Frank Lampard, funnily enough.
I was really upset when he signed with City instead of coming straight over. But yeah, we've been doing this for 10 years. So we've been very vocal pro rel. We've wanted promotion and relegation in the States. And
that was going to be my question.
Yeah, very much so. But I think the reason why is because I grew up in a city called Newark, which is just on the other side of the water of New York City. Sopranos made it famous. The Sopranos are all from Newark, and The Many Saints in Newark, which is the movie after that, which I was this close to being in. That city is pretty blighted. It's not like I get you Hull, maybe. I don't know. I'm trying to find a reference for you guys. Like there's not much is going on there. Everyone kind of makes fun of it. And to me, that would be a great place because there's so many Portuguese in Brazil. There's a massive Brazilian population there, second largest outside of Brazil. Already there's a bunch of kids who love the sport. If only there was promotion and relegation, there would be no reason for someone to start a small club there, maybe an academy, and then try to work their way up the ladder or the pyramid or try to develop players that they can sell on. And to me, it would really, you have 330 million people in this country. Think about how many players and talent and teams we have. Italy is the size of California. That's one of the 50 states. Think about how many teams there are in Italy. There's 3 professional teams, men's teams in the whole state of California. California, if it was on its own, if it's separated from the U.S., would be the 5th largest economy in the world. Think about that. Like, there's more than enough space, there's more than enough room, and there's more than enough talent. And there's
a cultural melting pot as well, isn't it? It's a cultural melting pot. Like people
Everyone's
from different
here.
parts of the world, South America, a little bit of European, and it's like, if you're not going to get good footballers there, people who absolutely love football since they were kids. Yeah, it's crazy.
So for me, it just seems like pro rel would be the catalyst to get those gears turning. But and Will Kuntz mentioned pay for play. He's anti the pay for play system, or at least he, spoke about it in a not so positive light. And that's because in order to go to an academy here, you have to pay. So really, anyone could get in as long as you could afford it, and it's very expensive. So the rest of the world, someone like Jamie Vardy type, a little bit of a ruffian, comes from a rough neck of the woods, maybe got in some trouble. That kid wouldn't play here. And look at the superstar that he turned into,
That's crazy. So is there any sort of infrastructure for the major clubs, I guess, for scouting at all? Or do they go around? Is it like more like college sports and stuff like that they'll go and take a look at?
All the MLS clubs have an academy, and for the most part, they're free. But, that's a drop in the bucket. That's a grain of sand, in the country compared to the amount of talent we have available here. And when you look at USL, which is another league that also just got first division recognition from U.S. Soccer, so there will be competing first divisions. They're going to institute pro rel across their 3 leagues,
which is class.
Yeah, it's huge, but it's a little bit of a smaller league, smaller clubs, but maybe that could fill in those gaps.
Yeah, and I think especially at the top level, Alexis, like I think I do from afar. I admire American sports. NFL, and like the hockey, baseball, basketball as well. I watch a bit of it, and it's great. But I always feel like the games don't have any weight until the end, until the last stretch of fixtures. It's like in baseball, they play over 100 games, but then it's like it really doesn't, in my eyes, like get interesting until it's like, right, who's getting the playoffs? Okay, you get the playoffs, and then it kicks on. You get the World Series, whatever. But like to not have that jeopardy of, right, if you don't pull like your weight, you're going to go down. You're going to be affected financially. You might not, you're going to have to fight to get back up. I think, obviously, you'll hear a lot of, I think it was funny when Will said on the podcast, he said he was pro relegation and promotion, but then said it won't happen for another 20 years, probably, if that. And I think, is that because do you reckon so many like franchise owners and general managers are so like, well, no, we spend all this money and we don't want to be in jeopardy of losing anything. It's a bit, do you think it's just because they don't want that jeopardy whatsoever? They just want to, or do you reckon they just hide behind the American sports?
The idea is foreign to them. You know, a lot of the original owners were NFL owners that were hedging their bets. So, and a lot of those are still in charge. So if you say to an old NFL owner, you might drop out of this division, the NFL doesn't even have a second division. There's no lower division NFL. There's maybe the Canadian Football League. So to them, they're like, I don't even understand what that means. Like there's no concept to it. What do you mean? I play colleges? Like there's no concept. So the idea that you can lose some of your money doesn't make as much sense to me as if you're willing to spend, you can make so much more. And I honestly, I don't know how any MLS owner doesn't look in the mirror and get scared at the rise of Wrexham and the popularity of this team. Bro, we got Americans. First of all, 70% of Americans don't even have their passports. So 30% of Americans travel outside the country. That's the true number, by the way. Imagine out of that 30, some of those people have chosen to go to Wales. Think about what I just said. They vacationed in Wales to go watch a football team, when that should scare you if you're an NFL team. You're like, well, they're not going to Miami. They're not going to Hawaii. They're going to Wales to go watch soccer. That should scare you and let you know, like, oh, there with that risk comes prosperity.
Yeah, crazy. I mean, I think that was what, you know, the documentary, Rob McElhenney's driving the point home over and over. He was like, there's relegation and promotion. So you could literally take a team from here to there. Yeah. As long as it's going to be hard, but yeah, you can. Right. And I mean, I won't turn this into a Wrexham podcast, but even I'm quite surprised at how meteoric their rise has been. I thought the money that they spent in the conference would transfer to League Two and possibly get them to League One. That last promotion is the most impressive one. I think totally different jungle next season. Championship now, when you're fighting those teams who've got the Premier League parachute payments and you're fighting teams who have, you know, I mean, look at Birmingham City, who they went up with. They spent £20 million on a centre forward in League One, which is unheard of. Absolutely unheard of. But yeah, I mean, fair play. I mean, and that speaks to the fandom of Americans, you know, they get the bit between their teeth and they get obsessed with something. It becomes their passion. We've seen Newcastle fans from here, there, and everywhere in the US come over here, make multiple trips this season, and are just so passionate. They've got the tattoos, and you speak to them. And I've been lucky enough to go over to the States. I've watched a couple of Newcastle games in New York, watched an England game in Boston. You might not like this, but I went to the Red Bulls arena and watched New York Red Bulls, but it was still very much enjoyable. And it's just sort of interacting.
You could pick any seat you wanted because they're most.
I think it was kind of busy. I got to see Bradley Wright Phillips.
Actually doing pretty good. Yeah, Bradley Wright Phillips is actually the homie, man.
Yeah, he's a legend, isn't he? He's a legend, isn't he? Yeah. But so like I said, I've had experience of this fandom, this intense fandom. Great stories about, you know, I was watching football and Newcastle came on and it just resonated with me. I've been to Newcastle, I went to university in Newcastle. What was the main driver behind you becoming an Arsenal fan?
So Newark and Kearney, these two towns, one town in New Jersey, have a really big part in the soccer history of the U.S. There's three towns, St. Louis being the other one, where in 1930, most people don't know this, 1930 in the first World Cup ever, the U.S. finished third. Most of those players came from St. Louis. St. Louis had a lot of Scottish immigrants that went there, thus became like a little bit of a football hotbed. And those players sort of became the ones that went to the World Cup at that time. In 1994, when the U.S. re-qualified for the World Cup, and, you know, obviously it was here in the U.S. and it was a huge deal, most of those players, a big chunk, I think something like 5 out of the 11 starters, came from a town called Kearney, New Jersey, which again, the Scots American club there, those players learn to play. To this day, if you go to Carney, you would think you're in an English-speaking part of the UK because all they care about is soccer. That's all they talk about. Every kid is wearing a soccer jersey. It's how problems are solved. High schools have big rivalries there. When they play each other, the fields are magnificent. They look like mini stadiums. It's super important. Every deli and sandwich shop you go to has like soccer player posters up. It's the most important sport. The NBA, NFL doesn't even exist there. All they care about is football. I went to school there, and I grew up in Newark, which again has a massive Brazilian and Portuguese and Spanish population. I came from an area that's mostly Cuban, Dominican, Puerto Rican, so baseball was bigger, but I hung out with kids of all shapes and sizes and different backgrounds. So I kind of understood like, oh, I see what the Jamaicans play this, the Trinidadians play this, the Brazilians play this, the Portuguese play this. So I was like, I kind of want to be involved. So I, kicked around a little bit as a kid, played in some of the teams, but it wasn't until I saw Thierry Henry and I said, who's this guy with his socks over the knees, just skating past all these brute looking British dudes, It's like, it felt to me like in that era, like I watched a lot of the Portuguese league because of my friends who were Portuguese and their dads had these massive satellites. And I watched a lot of like South American sports or football because all the Brazilians and whatnot, and Copa Libertadores, which is their Champions League. So you see some of the Argentinian teams, but it felt completely different when I watched the English league. I'm like, man, this is a little bit different. These guys are bleeding. There's mud on their back. Like the game feels a little bit tougher here, in a different way. It's not as beautiful, quote unquote. But then here comes this one guy just sort of gliding past everyone, and I was transfixed. And there was a lot of guys that were Manchester United fans. And at that time, there were only two teams on tape delay that they would show, Manchester United or Arsenal. So everyone who loved Manchester United, I wanted to be a little different. So I go, I'm going to go with this other team. And it was great. A year later, they're invincible. It was amazing, And
then God just got you then. It's just,
that was it. I was hooked. But also, like, it kind of meant something to be a fan of soccer in this country, especially at that time. It was like a counterculture. It was a way to be a little different. The same way maybe like a Brit doesn't like football, and that's like a way of being a little bit different. For us, it was like,
we don't like those people.
Yeah. Who needs them? They're not going to listen to my podcast. So for me, it was a way of showing that I was a little different. It was a way of kind of adding a little spice to my life. And it ended up being the greatest decision ever. It's the sport that I love the most. I care about it the most. Right now, I'm a big Knicks fan. So right now I'm kind of excited for the Knicks. But for the most part, 9 days, 9 times out of 10, 6.5 out of 7 days, I'm mostly talking about or watching football. And it's amazing.
Love that. So in terms of the team now, so we'll try and talk a bit about Arsenal and how it's going now. I want to start with your manager. I want to start with Mikel Arteta. Funny old chap, him. I mean, I think I won't give my opinion on the job I think he's done. And spoiler, I don't think it's a bad job whatsoever. I just think as he's got more and more progressed in this job, he's starting to get a little bit more cynical, a little bit more dark artistry to him, even though that he calls out the likes of Newcastle for doing said dark arts. And I just want to start with a quote that he said the other day. He said about how we being Arsenal, haven't been beaten by a top 6 side this season, which shows how consistent we've been. And I was like, you do know Newcastle are in the top 3, right? I'm like,
are you talking about EFL Cup?
Or... No, I'm talking about Premier League, baby. I'm talking about in November, we beat you 1-0 at St. James's Park. And I was just a bit like, maybe I'm reading into this a bit too cynically, but I was like, are you saying this to try and piss us off, or are you just forgetting that we're 3rd in the league? But he said some strange stuff recently. He said he blamed the ball when we played you in the cup as well, which was strange. But right. I'm just getting the Newcastle quote out me.
Yeah,
my genuine question to you though is, what are your thoughts on the 6 years under Arteta? Is he the man to realise Arsenal's ambitions?
So I'll be very open. I was very pro Mikel Arteta even before Unai Emery was hired, simply because that's who Arsene Wenger said Arsenal should go and sign as their manager. Even
was that when he was number 2 at City?
Yeah.
Was he number 2 at City then? Yeah.
So when he played and was the captain of Arsenal, he would stick around after training and go over tactics with Arsene Wenger. And
of course,
Arsene Wenger.
Why do I forget he played? Of course, he played there.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Arsene Wenger was very kind of anti-tactics for the most part. There's a famous quote from Thierry Henry where they were about to play Barcelona in the Champions League, and he went to Arsene and was like, "Hey, man, we're about to play Barcelona in the Champions League. You kind of haven't gone over any tactics, any plans." And he was like, "We play our game, and we'll beat them." That was his whole thing. His whole thing was like, "You play your game, and they'll have to change for you." And as much as I was a fan of Arsene Wenger, I'm not necessarily a fan of that way of going about it. So I like that Mikel Arteta kind of comes up with tactical plans and makes adjustments at halftime, which was a big deal. I was very pro him getting hired, and as soon as we finally got him, I said, this is the guy who's going to take us to the promised land. I can see him being the manager of Arsenal. At that time, I could see him being the manager of Arsenal for the next 10, 15, 20 years because he wanted to change the club. He wanted to get rid of all the people who didn't care about the badge. Players, front office, secretaries, everybody. If you didn't care about the badge and you didn't want to push this forward, then you weren't going to be a part of this club. And I think that was needed. I was pro 5-year plan. I said, give him time. We're at the time now. We're at the point now where finishing second, potentially 3 years in a row. If we lose to you, I think we slide down to third, if I'm not mistaken. But
which is crazy as a Newcastle fan, by the way. That's still boxing in my brain.
I'm actually happy for you because I'm a big Eddie Howe fan. So I'm excited. But maybe you get bumped out of Champions League and you decide to sell Isak for a lot cheaper.
Okay,
so
let's not derail this lovely conversation we're having, Alexis.
It's been nice so far.
I took you off on a tangent. We'll get you back on track. Mikel Arteta, please.
Okay, you brought up the ball, so I got one shot back. But now I'm at the point where I think you have to win something, right? Like there's been a lot of money spent. There's been a lot of players brought in. There's been a lot of additional coaches brought in. There's been a lot of talk here and there. And I get losing Adu and bringing in a new sporting director kind of changes things around. But for the most part, not every signing has been great. I think it's been 50-50. I think you have to, at some point, all of these plans and everything needs to come to a culmination. Winning the FA Cup in his first half season in 2020 has brought him a lot of time. That leeway and that time is up now. So I think this year, you don't win a trophy, fine. I'm willing to wait one more season. But I think next year, you have to win something. You have to give the fans something, especially if we're going to keep the players of the likes of Bukayo Saka and William Saliba and, Calafiori and Martin Odegaard, which I know some of the fans maybe don't necessarily want to keep them. I certainly do. If you're going to keep them, wanting to play for Arsenal and playing for that badge, it's because you have a plan. You're willing to put them in a place to win something in European glory at some point, but win a few domestic cups. Show me that you can get that done. If not, maybe you were the guy to get us to this point, and we need someone else to get us to that next point. And I'm fine with that being the case because I think 5 years is more than enough time.
I mean, that was going to be my next question as well in terms of this season and progress. If you're going to compare this season to last season, let's say you do finish second. You did mention it. That sort of rides on this game on Sunday, which is again crazy to me. But let's say you finish second and you got to the semi-finals of the Champions League. Haven't made it to a semi-final in the Champions League in a long time. Do you still see that as progress? Do you reckon that maybe buys them a little bit of, maybe it's a double-edged sword because it's great that you got there, but you've talked about winning domestic cups, and it feels like sometimes teams like Arsenal always have their one eye on the league and one eye on the Champions League, and then it's just we'll play half a team in the cups and see how far we can get if we can get the latter stages. So do you feel like it's been an improvement from last season, and do you reckon the attention on trying to get major honours is going to fall away from the domestic cups?
Yes and no. Like I can understand the point of some of the fans when they think, okay, we won. If you win Carabao Cup, what does that even mean? Blah, blah, blah. But I think
everything to some of us, brother.
Yes. But that's the point I was going to make. It's like I think Arsenal fans want to consider themselves fans of one of the biggest clubs in the world. Mm-hmm. And while I certainly do think we're one of the biggest clubs in the world, one of the most important clubs in the world, at the same time, you have to give your fans, even if we want to call the Carabao Cup a small victory or a stepping stone victory, those are important. If you don't get those on the way to a much bigger one, you don't build that momentum. And second of all, people are going to look back and say, 5 years, all he did was win the FA Cup in his first half season. And frankly, he played a 3-5-2, which isn't even really his style. He just went super defensive, although we've kind of seen him return to that a bit this season. It wasn't even what he had promised. It wasn't really part of his plan. It just sort of happened. And I'm not holding that against him. I celebrated that FA Cup like you wouldn't believe. But at the end of the day, you have to win one of those bigger ones, but you can't eschew away those smaller domestic trophies on the way there. All Arsenal fans care about is the domestic league and the Champions League. You're 100%. You're dead on when you say that. But you win an FA Cup, we've won it more than anyone else. You win a Carabao Cup, that gives you something to celebrate midseason. It builds that momentum, and also it tests the mettle of your players. You're in a crunch time match. You're in a bracket. You're in a knockout round, or you're in a final. That's where you build. That's where you build that knowledge and that experience and that history that lets you go to a PSG and maybe not falter the way they did.
Like breeds a win mentality then, almost.
Absolutely.
Especially like top sides. No, it's a great point, man. I mean, we'll talk about the squad now. Arsenal, like many, but you've had your fair share of injuries this season. You lost Havertz. I mean, we can talk about Havertz till we're blue in the face as well, because some people, especially Arsenal fans, they've really got behind him. I've heard the chants, and a lot of people thought he was a waste of money, and he did start scoring a few goals. Yet a centre forward, he is not. However, he is a little bit more of a focal point of attack than, say, a Trossard or a ghost of Newcastle's past, Mikel Marino. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of which, you're without him due to a suspension this coming game. Declan Rice missed the game at Anfield. There's waiting for confirmation on whether he will be fit.
He's doubtful.
He's doubtful for Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean, I can obviously it goes without saying Rice is a big miss, but what's your thoughts on Mikel Marino? We obviously had him for a tiny little bit up in Newcastle, and I personally thought he looked like he had the makings of a very tidy footballer. There was rumours of being homesick and sort of started not pulling his weight in training, and that's why Rafa Benitez sold him. But I was gutted to see him go because he was a very versatile player, not as versatile as you've shown him to be.
Yeah, he learned a few things in those years, huh?
Yeah, but do you see him as a big miss coming up in the game coming up?
Yes and no. I think when I saw him go back to the midfield in the first match against PSG, he looked out of sorts, if you will, to use a British idiom, if I can. He seems to flow so much better as a striker, which I don't think that's his skill set. I don't think it's not why we bought him. It's not where he should be playing. When he first came in, I said, this is a duel winner. That's why we're bringing this guy in. This guy wins duels. Same reason why Arsenal going after Zubimendi. The guy's a duel winner, baby. He knows where to stand. He positions him well. And I don't think he ever really caught on with the team in that sense with that in the midfield. And then seeing him up front, he's really our only weapon right now up front. And even if he's not the best striker in the world, he's tall. He gets his head on balls, on crosses that are coming in. And he seems to be smart enough to kind of play a false nine or 9.5, as some Italians will call it, where he can take up some of those positions in the box right in front of the goal, or he can step out closer to the top of the box and maybe link up with Odegaard, which I think releases Odegaard from kind of camping out on the right side close to Saka. And I don't trust Martinelli. I think, as far as I'm concerned, send that guy back to Brazil this summer.
That's so strange that as well, because there was a time where he looked like he was like maybe not on a level with Saka, but in terms of two young wingers, really exciting, very direct. He was a good dribbler, and he just seems to have really went off the boil. I know he's had his injuries as well, but I mean,
yeah, but I don't think the injuries. I think it's a head issue. I think he's lost confidence in his one thing that you would ask of him to do. And I don't think he's a bad person. I don't think he's a bad footballer. I just don't think for what we need, he's the right guy. When everyone is willing to double Bukayo Saka, and you've got Martin Odegaard kind of camping up there, and whoever's playing right back at the time is kind of also up there, you're crowded around on the right-hand side. Every Arsenal match happens on the right-hand side of the final third. What you need the left side for is to release that pressure. If Martinelli would simply drive at defenders, which I know he has done more of in the last few weeks, but if he would simply drive at defenders, and the moment he sees a little bit of daylight, when I think of the most dangerous wingers, I think of someone who, if you give him half an inch, man, if he beats you half an inch step, he's firing a perfect cross, or he's putting pressure on the goal, he's testing the goalkeeper, or he's sending in diagonal, balls along the ground. He does none of those things, or certainly not efficient enough. He stopped driving at defenders for a while. He seems to have brought that back, but he's fairly inefficient in the final third. And if that's the case, you as a defender never think, yo, come here and help me. And you could keep all the pressure on Bukayo Saka. One guy can sort of handle Martinelli, and that's not what we need out of the left side, which is why you hear names like Nico Williams and other names like that, Rafinha which I don't think Rafinha is coming to Arsenal, but that's why you hear people talking about those names, because you want someone on the left that can put that pressure on the back line, and Martinelli's not doing that. I think if that were the case, I think you'd see players like a Marino, whoever comes in as your center forward next season. Hopefully they do. We've been talking about a center forward for pretty much since Aubameyang left. If we could get someone to play up front, or I'm sorry, since Gabriel Jesus has been injured or inefficient, since we could get someone to play that 9 position, I think you'd see the left and the right get a little bit more relief. And I think that's why you're not seeing as much activity certainly out of Bukayo Saka lately, where every time he does something good, it has to be a worldie. He has to, he has to nutmeg a defender. Something incredible has to happen in order for him to even get a shot on target.
Well, I mean, I won't talk about centre forwards at Arsenal because it's going to get me onto a certain subject I don't want to talk about, and frankly, I'm sick of being talked about when it comes to Arsenal. No guesses. You've already bless you. You've already alluded to it, so we'll skip by that, like a Thierry Henry run down the left, or maybe
what player reminds me a little bit of Thierry? Never mind.
I was about to make the same little joke, and I thought, shut up, Matty. One question I'm going to ask you before we get into predictions and wrapping this thing up. I asked this question to, funny enough, we had a Manchester United fan on this a few weeks ago, and he was in Seattle, but he was from England, and I just said to him, "Look, loaded question. What's your thoughts on Newcastle United?" He proceeded to really go in hard on Eddie Howe, which I was like, "Whoa, pump the brakes there, speed racer." Try. I know it was a loaded question, but I'm not giving you this much wiggle room. But you've already said you're a fan of Eddie Howe, so I mean, Eddie, speak to me about what it's like as an outsider looking in. Job Eddie Howe has done, and maybe just at Newcastle as a project, as a football club. Do you have any sort of opinions on where you see them going in the next few years?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a shame that Miggy's not there, because I thought he played well at times for you guys.
Yeah, he did.
And I think you saw someone like Eddie Howe be really tough on him, and then really opened. It's sort of, you could start to see he knows how to use his players in the best position. I don't think a better example. I only brought up Miggy because he played in MLS and now he's back in MLS. But I think the best example is Joe Linton. When he was under Steve Bruce, I said, this guy, get him off. He doesn't belong in this league, and I think I'm pretty good at analyzing the game, but I'm not a scout. I can't look at a player and go, this is what it's only because of this that you're performing this badly. Sometimes I lose faith in players and I'm proven incorrect when a new coach comes in or a new manager and finds something. And his ability to do that I think when the Saudi bought the team, everyone's like, here's Mbappe and Vinicius Jr. and you're just going to have the Galacticos in north of England. And for him to take the players that he has and turn them into world beaters and the spirit the team plays with, and I think that's the markings of a good manager, because one of the reasons I love football so much is because you could train however you want for 6 days. And then the day of the match, it just depends on what the players can do. You're yelling. Sure, you're yelling stuff, and maybe there's halftime, but for the most part, those players have to figure it out on their own. So the manager has to be able to instill the confidence, instill the tactics, and instill the belief, the bravery to be able to follow through with some of those tactics and plans. And Newcastle seems to be able to do that. I watched the first Champions League, the first match against PSG when y'all came back to Champions League at St. James Park. That atmosphere, I was like, that I need to go to St. James Park. I don't want to walk all the way to the away end. That seems really cool. It's a lot.
Yeah, have you got your oxygen tank? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, bro, I need an escalator. I need you to be a bit more American. But when I saw that atmosphere, I said, this is incredible. And I don't think you get that without an Eddie Howe. I don't think you get to that point. I don't think you get the belief and the fight, the fans wanting to sort of fight for this team as hard as they do. If it's not made in the makeup of Eddie Howe, sure, other managers could do it. But the fact that he was able to do it, and again, no English manager has ever won the Premier League. And I think he might be the first one to be able to do it.
Oh, well, I didn't expect that, but I mean, I'll take it, and hopefully it's with Newcastle. But I mean, I can talk until I'm blue in the face about Eddie Howe. He's done everything. He's brought everything for my football club, and people forget as well. Yep, Saudi takeover, and we were able to inject quite a bit of cash in, but nowhere near as much as people thought, and nowhere near. We're not in the top 3, 4, 5 spenders over the last 4 years. He's had to, take mold players like Joe Linton. For a while,
Yeah.
Joe Willock was unbelievable for us. He's having his struggles at the moment, but Fabian
He's injured,
Schär,
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's injured. I think he's going to miss the rest of the season by the looks of the things.
Yeah.
But he still became a force in that season. We qualified for Champions League. Fabian Schär, yeah. I mean, some of the players that were Jacob Murphy, for goodness sake, what he's done this season with him is unbelievable, and that's testament to him.
Botman is one of the best defenders in the league.
Yeah, well, we're finally getting him back. Yeah.
Dan Burn is all over CBS dancing. I've interviewed him twice. It's incredible.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Bruno Guimaraes, I think also an incredible midfielder. Every year people link him with another team.
Yeah, I mean, they're the players obviously he brought in. I was just really impressed with the players, what he's done with who he inherited.
Yeah,
and then to obviously what he's. I'm not saying it's down to Eddie Howe, obviously in his system, but Sandro Tonali, I think, could be one of the classiest players I've ever seen in a black and white shirt. To be honest, mate.
If he could get all the off the pitch stuff settled.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's sorted. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Knock on wood. But I've kept you far longer than I said I was going to, and this has been an absolute.
I actually have a question for you before we get to predictions. What the hell is a stoddy cake?
A stotty cake. It depends who you ask, because a stotty is it's like a bread bun type of thing. So if you were go into a like a baker's and go oh, can I have a stotty cake? It's it looks like a big bit of bread. You can get half ones. It's mostly used to make sandwiches. It's just bread basically.
Yeah.
It's normally you'll see on English Twitter and Instagram. It's what do you call this? And it's
what do other people call it?
I'm sure. And then I'm sorry for any Yorkshire where people a barm cake is what some people call it. I'm sure. I'm literally furious.
I've heard barm. I've heard
so
there's so many words you guys have for sandwiches.
But a barm cake's more like your conventional sort of burger bunish, but people might still call that. And then there's the stotties they're a bit bigger. They're just I'll send you a picture. I'm going to send you.
I have seen a picture. The reason I asked you is because in Newark, where I grew up, it's all people. The neighborhood I grew up in was all people from Naples,
right?
And that's called a pizza in our neighborhood. Yeah, so pizza, before it became the thing that with the sauce and cheese on top, was just in Italy, it was just a word for flatbread, because it was invented in Naples when it was called Neapolis. It was a part of Greece. It was a Greek port city. So pizza was any flatbread. That's called a pizza. There's something called an Italian hot dog in Newark, New Jersey, where they take half of a stoddy, they dig it out almost like a big pita, and they stuff it with 2 foot long hot dogs, fried potatoes, fried peppers, ketchup, and mustard. You got to look up Italian hot dog, Newark, New Jersey. It's a stoddy cake filled, and it's the greasiest, heaviest thing in the world, and there's nothing like it.
Mate, people should. There's we have a membership on this YouTube channel, and people should be paying a premium to hear that sexy filth. That was. Yeah. I'm sat here getting excited, brother. Yeah, put it on. Clip it, Chris, and put it on OnlyFans.
Promise me, there's a place called Dickie D's. Dickie D's. Just remember that name.
Where's
it's
that
right around where the Sopranos would have grown up. Those characters. Yeah, it's just outside of Newark, but that is the North Ward. And you guys are in the north, is where all the Italians went. So we have stoddy cakes. How crazy is that?
Well, I am booking my flights as we speak.
Not to Newark, please.
For my fourth visit, and I'll venture over there. I'll go over the water and I'll get myself. Oh my God, that sounded amazing, by the way. And I'm instantly I'll go show the wife it, and that sounds. Don't clip that. And then I'm sure she'll want to come back as well, because we were over there last summer and it was absolutely awesome.
If you come back to New York, I'm gonna take you for an Italian hot dog.
Please do.
We're gonna go get hot dogs and stoddies.
Speaking of which, best bar in the sort of New York area to watch Premier League football?
Oh, great question, because we just did a video on this. There's a bar in Brooklyn called Fancy Free that it's the best Arsenal atmosphere in the world. But if you just want to watch Premier League, there's a bar called Smithfield Hall. It's absolutely incredible. It's on 28th Street, Midtown. They literally have tons of TVs everywhere, incredible drinks, and the atmosphere is great. It's mostly, I think a lot of Manchester United fans go there. It's not a Manchester United bar, but it's filled with every fan of every team. It's so fun. It's 2 sides. It's like 2 different bars joined in one. So sometimes you'll get opposing fans on each side, and one building will yell louder than the other one. It's a great atmosphere. It's pretty cool. Only in New York.
Class. Absolutely class. Alexis, this has been amazing. I only have one more question for you, and that is, how do you see this Sunday going?
I see Arsenal drawing 2-2, just like they did in Anfield.
Really? Do you just feel like, I mean, I think I would take that, but it's strange because I just keep looking at Aston Villa. It's Aston Villa who I'm actually scared of, because Villa have Man United and Spurs next in the last 2 games. I'm sorry, they are gone. They are. There is no way that Aston Villa don't beat those 2 teams, and that gets them 69 points. We need to get the 69 points, and the goal difference is much better. So, like, if we get a point, it's like, yeah, we're on 67. But if we get a point against Everton, we're on 68. So it doesn't really make any more of a sort of cushion for us. We just need to win another game. So I mean, I would probably take the point now, though. That's the strange thing. And I was thinking maybe a score draw. However, our record there is awful. I appreciate we've already went there and won in the Carabao and won twice at St. James's. And this would be an unprecedented quadruple over Arsenal, which is unheard of. But we haven't won there since 2010. That's our only win at the Emirates. And then since 2010, we have had 1 point. That's it. 1 point in crazy. 15 years. And we've had some hammering
dog shit for most of that time.
Yes. I remember one game, it was absolutely, it was a ding-donger under Alan Pardew. It was 1-0 Newcastle, 1-1, 2-1, 2-2.
Alan Pardew's the guy who did this, right?
Yeah, he also headbutted David Myler on the
God.
Yeah, crazy guy. But yeah, I remember it was 3-3 with 10 minutes to go, and we lost 7-3. It was crazy. I think Walcott scored a hat trick. Yeah, but it's not a stomping ground. I'm particularly happy that we're going to at this stage in the season. But given how we're playing, I think that maybe we can give you the game. I think I always say this real sort of cliche, but I think it's going to be won and lost in midfield. I think if Guimaraes and Tonali are on song, even without Joe Linton, then we can impose ourselves, and especially if Declan Rice is absent. But you've still got a lot of talented players, man. A lot of talented players, and
defensively, I'm comfortable. But can Partey keep his head? Not give up 2 goals like he did against PSG, or pick up a stupid yellow like he did the week before. Mm-hmm. Can Partey keep his head in the midfield? It looks like we're going to be without Marino, which we know. Declan Rice. Obviously, Gabriel is out. Gabriel Jesus is out. Urian Timber's also doubtful. Trossard, thigh injury, he's out. I mean, we're playing with academy kids in some positions.
Oh, it's a good job you've got a decent academy, though. Yeah. But honestly, man, so 2-2, I'll stick with you, mate. I'll stick with you. I hope I'm wrong. If we pick up 3 points, I'll definitely be throwing a sickie on the Monday because I'll need to celebrate that. But Alexis, honestly, mate, this has been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you've had a very hectic day, so thank you so much. If you can let people know where to find you on Instagram, YouTube, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, you see the Cooligans logo right there. That's at Soccer Cooligans on everything. And if you want to find me personally, at Not Alexis on everything else. I'll post more comedy on Not Alexis, most of the soccer stuff, most of the football stuff. How do you say football in a Geordie accent? Is it football?
I mean, people are going to get annoyed because they have a go at my accent. To you, I'll sound like a Northeasterner, but there's a sort of divide in the accent when as soon as you go about 35 minutes down the road, it gets to like Teesside. So that's like Middlesbrough way. So Middlesbrough, Hartlepool, that type of thing. And there's so many little twerks and idiosyncrasies that my accent, proper Geordies can tell a mile off. So I've had people in the comment sections before calling me a Mackham, which is obviously Sunderland, and they've called me Smoggies, which is Borough. But I would just say football.
Footy. Football. All right, I'm gonna try that.
Nice one, brother. Well, honestly, I hope we can have you back on maybe next season, and we'll talk some more. But for everyone who's watching,
and next time you're in New York, hop on the show, dude. If you're in New York,
of course. Again, I'm already on my way, brother. I'm going to be eating those double Italian hot dogs like the just stotty cakes by themselves.
Look it up. Your NHS is going to be under so much stress if I bring those out there.
I've got a heart issue anyway, brother. So I'm going to be like,
maybe we don't do that then.
But I'm here for a good time, not a long time, Alexis. Anyway, everyone, thank you so much for watching. This has been an absolute pleasure to have you. If you're here, please like the video, share the video, do all this stuff that we like you to do. If you haven't subscribed already, what are you doing? Please hit that subscribe button. It costs nothing, and you can comment about my accent below if you would like to, or be more sensible and talk about the predictions for this Sunday's game. If you want to give a little bit back, it's $2.99 a month to become a member. You get early access to videos like this and plenty of exclusive content. we're really looking forward to seeing more members on this channel. But if you're traveling down to the Emirates on Sunday, please safe travels, and fingers crossed we can get those points that take us to the Champions League next season. But until next time, we will see you soon.